Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Large Format Photography Podcast. My name is Simon Forster and I'm joined by my co-host Andrew Bartram and Kate Miller-Wilson. Hello Andrew.
Hello.
And hello Kate.
Hi.
Right, first of all, I just want to say thanks to John Boyce of Odyssey De Vere for taking part or stroke putting up with an interview by Andrew for our last episode.
More like it, I think, putting up, I think.
Yeah. So hope you guys have listened to that because that was a good listen. I really enjoyed that. Okay, well let's move straight into what we're going to do this week, and let's go over to the Lincolnshire Fens, is the Cambridgeshire Fens, and see what Andrew's been up to.
Get my darkroom up and going, really. I'm sticking to my pledge not to take too many pictures. I have taken some, but nothing with large format. But yeah, getting the darkroom up and ready, really. So, specifically tidying the darkroom? Yeah, I'm pretty much doing everything in the darkroom to avoid actually going in there and making prints. But I'll be happy once it's tidy and sorted out. I did have a problem with my Meopta enlarger, and I didn't think the color filters were working properly in the head. So I took the head off and undid a load of screws, and didn't think I'd ever get it back together again, but I did, and it seems to be working now. So that's a result, isn't it? Mm. And I coated some paper with liquid emulsion, and I've been playing with that to. I think the trouble I'm having, right? I really love what people like Graham Vasey do with it, because they kind of just slap. No disrespect to Graham, I think it's a very deliberate artistic-y thing. He slaps it on and he doesn't really bother too much, and that's part of the result. You know, he gets the image kind of disappears in areas, then it reappears. And I think in my head, I'm trying to coat paper like Ilford, and I'm slightly disappointed when it doesn't, when it's not looking uniform. And someone pointed out to me, but if you wanted uniform spread, you can just use Ilford multigrade paper. You don't need to, that's the idea of using a brush, is that it looks kind of brushed on.
Exactly, yeah. Although I think there's definitely something to be said, though, isn't there, for the way that you brush that stuff on. And making that look like you've just brushed it on, as opposed to somebody that really has just brushed it on. There's a skill in itself, isn't there? Yeah,
I'm not really good. I've now bought a wider brush. I don't know. I got really annoying little bubbles on the last one, and the little bubbles weren't there before, but it's because I watered the emulsion down with some photo flow wetting agent, and it certainly made it go further, but I don't really like the result. So I think I'm going to use it neat from here on in, and I've now got a 3-inch Japanese brush, or one of those sort of flat. I think they call them hake brushes, as opposed to cod brushes. And before you say anything, and and so I'll see how I go. But I'm honing the technique, shall we say, at the moment. So there we go.
Well, before we got going, we were including Kate. We saw those photos you just shared in our little chat.
I'm very excited about that.
So, what were they direct positives? Is that what was going on?
No. So, did I tell you about my upcoming exhibition? He says grandly, at the Oxfam shop in Huntingdon. Did I tell you about that, or was that another podcast?
I think we have covered it, but I'm sure that people would have forgotten about that already. So please go ahead and do it again.
or like you just weren't listening. So I've got this little mini exhibition in what Kate, you'd call a thrift store.
Sure.
So this thrift store in Huntingdon, where I live, you've probably got a few Huntingdons in the USA, I gather. But
I think so.
this one's in Cambridgeshire, and it specialises in books and vinyl, and it's run by a guy who's just a lovely chap. And I was chatting to him, and I'd bought a book on darkroom printing, and we were chatting, and he basically offered me an exhibition. So in his window, which all sounds very grand, and I showed him a few pictures on Instagram and Flickr. And he said to make it local if you can, because folks like pictures of local things. So I said, well, my landscape is the fenlands, and this Kate is a flat landscape drained by Dutch people in the 17th century largely. The soil is black and peaty, lots of straight lines, either roads or telegraph poles or drainage ditches, and it can be very, very evocative. And my first thoughts were I've already got some large format prints, but I wasn't really too happy with them. And I've been meaning to go back and reprint some. And then I was looking at my Flickr feed the other day and I thought, some of the ones that really speak to me the most about the Fens are the ones I've done using Polaroid pictures, black and white Polaroids. And I've gone out early in the morning. It's still misty very often. And it's just caught a feeling of the Fens, which I really, really like. But of course, they're little Polaroids, and I don't think exhibiting these little Polaroids in the window would be great. So I tried uploading them to Ilford's website, Ilford in Cheshire. I think it's actually called Harman Laboratory, but they do really good quality prints. And the website's super easy to use. And it tells you if the resolution is big enough for the size that you want, and mine weren't, so I had to go back and rescan them. So I took my Polaroids, and I've now got 4 8-inch by 8-inch prints from Harman Labs, I think they're called, and they're superb. I think including postage, it was just under £25 for the 4 of them, but they look great, and I'm going to window map them and write up a little bit of blurb about the Fens and photography and what I do, and those 4 images I might get 1 or 2 more done will be the basis of my little exhibition. So it was going to be darkroom work and it was going to be large format. Now it's neither. It's Polaroid and prints that I haven't made, but they've done a great job, and I'll share them into the group.
It's lovely work.
Have you used? I think they're called Harman Labs, Simon?
I've got a feeling a friend of mine sent some HP5 over to them a few years ago
for developing.
Just for developing, yeah. But other than that, no, I've not.
Well, the website's super easy to use. It gives you lots of choice about final image size and different types of finishes, and I uploaded them at the weekend, and they came back today in a big cylindrical tube thing, very well packaged, and I was really, really blown away. Okay. I've been thinking about how to get my Polaroid images, just up on the wall, really, because that's some of the work that I've done most that I really like. And so now I think I've realised that if I just send these files off to Ilford Harman Technology, then they do a great job.
No, I really like the look of them. I'm not a big fan of Polaroid, but I really like how these images have come out. So it makes more sense to me now, because they're literally just actually they're more than just photographs of Polaroids, aren't they? Because there's some weird things going on around the edges and things. What kind of that wasn't something that just came out of one of those 600 Polaroids, is it?
No, I think one of those shots is from a plastic box Polaroid camera, and there's at least 2 there are from an SX70 Alpha 1 camera, which is the sort of Rolls-Royce folding glass lens Polaroid camera. So I shoot with just black and white film with the white border, but for those Fenland ones, what I've done is just taken an X-Acto knife and peeled away the white border, and when you peel away the white border, you get that kind of grungy look underneath. You see,
that was a bit that was confusing me. I couldn't really understand.
And then I just crop it to a square as opposed to including all the rest of the frame.
Yeah, very effective.
There we go. So That's it. That's me. What about you?
I've already told this story once, actually, on the Classic Lenses podcast. But
but our listeners don't listen to that.
Of course not. So last Saturday, I went to a viewing. I think it's the second viewing that they've done of One Shot Inch and Down, and I've really enjoyed it. The experience as a whole day, because it was something that Hamish Gill of 35mmC had organised. And
you might need to explain to folks what it is you're talking about.
The 35mmC, because it's too small. 35mmC is a blog site page, reference page, that kind of thing, that's run by a chap called Hamish Gill, and it was initially started off as a resource for compact cameras, but it's exploded since then, so they pretty much will cover just about anything, although they don't do that much in the way of large format. They do touch on a bit of medium format, but it's more for the smaller formats. But, he's interested in the improper photography like us as well. And he'd listened to these two chaps known as the Danger Boys. I think Sunny 16 have given them that name. That's a Sunny 16 podcast. And they are David Allen and Simon Ridddell, who've done some pretty... got themselves into some difficult places to take photographs with large format. Is perhaps one way of introducing them, if you like. And they had... I'm just thinking about, it's almost like how much to go into the story, really. But what actually happened, they were given an opportunity to take a photograph in a ex-World War II heavy fuel oil tank. And I think there's 4 of these things, and they're like 300 meters long. So that's even longer in yards. And very wide and very tall. I mean, the place holds the world record for the longest echo. I think they used a starting pistol, and I think it lasted for 2 minutes. So while they were down there, I'm not sure if it's while they were actually down there, but some local singers might go down there as well, and the echo takes so long you can harmonise, or they can if you can sing. Anyway, I can't. But the one particular singer was harmonising with their own voice through the echoes. It's just an incredible place, but it's obviously very dark, very damp, cold, and the sides and the walls are pretty much oozing oil back out of them as because they're ever so slightly porous. And so the idea was to take this photograph, just one photograph using an Intrepid camera, 4x5, and which was effectively light painted. So it was at one end of the tank, and then David would then walk down the tank with a flash gun and just illuminating parts of the tunnel. And they produced an image from that, and it was lovely. They shot it on HP5. I think they pushed it to 1600, I think. And then that was almost the easy bit, because they also wanted to print in the tunnel. And that was incredibly difficult, because they also wanted to make a very large picture as well. And I think it was like 1 meter by 1.2 meters. And they used the same camera as an enlarger, because they had the first production Intrepid enlarger attachment that goes onto the back of it. I think you pop out the ground glass and then project the negative through the taking lens onto a sheet of photographic paper. And from that, they then developed that using swimming pool tanks, not pools, but inflatable, what do you call them? Inflatable pools?
Birthing tanks? That would have been really appropriate, wouldn't it? You kind of giving birth to this thing. That's what they should have used. They've missed a trick there. Tell them that from me.
Okay, well, they did. Well, they use something like birthing tanks. And
paddling pool. Kiddies paddling pool, probably, you mean, don't you?
That's it, paddling pools. That's right. And that was an interesting process how they did that, because they had problems with that, because they forgot or lost their stop bath, and they had to improvise. So if you want to know how they improvise, you can watch the film that they made.
Couldn't they just use water?
Well, if they had enough water, then yes, but they only had what they could carry in with them. So for instance, they printed on fibre paper, and you're thinking, well, and no water? No, they used hyperclear, a whole paddling pool of hyperclear to wash the fibre paper print. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they improvised with the stop bath, which was funny. And their first print didn't work out quite as well as they wanted to, and they're getting to the point of doing it the second time round. But so I think they've been underground for like 24 hours or possibly longer at this point, and they were shattered. You know, it was cold. Simon has type 1 diabetes, so his circulation's not great, and they should have had a cameraman with them filming them, and the cameraman was ill, so they were just doing this kind of stuff themselves. So that made life even harder for them. So that would slow them down. So we watched this film, and it's a feature-length film that they made. It's the first time they've ever actually put anything like this together, and it's well worth watching. It's probably fair to say it's slightly rough around the edges a little bit, but they've never done anything like this before, so be aware of that. But don't let that take anything away from what they've done, because it was a great achievement, and it's to see what they actually produced after that time and how they did it. It was just great to see. And we'll put some links in the notes. In fact, there's also in our Facebook group, David has dropped in a post only today with a link about how you can watch that film. It's available for streaming, and it's not much as well. It's a small cost, and that's there to help them get back the costs that they've had to put into making it. Because I think it took them a week down there to actually set the shot up. So it was quite an activity, and it was a really good day with the photo walk, and then followed by that showing at Hamish Gill's co-working space in Worcester, which is called The Kiln.
Yeah, I saw lots of excited people tweeting about it, and saw some photographs on Twitter from folks that I follow. All look very good. So I had two observations, really. One you've already answered about where does one go to see the film. The other was I don't use artificial lighting much. I'm very intrigued by it, and I kind of understand how to do it, but it all seems such a big faff for me, really. So I shy away from it, like I think a lot of photographers do. So the idea of actually doing light painting in the dark just blows me away, really. I mean, did they have any sense of, were they just sort of making up as they went along, or did they do some tests to say, well, I need to set the flash to this power and do this amount of exposures on this bit of wall? I mean, how did without watching the film, how did the technical stuff get overcome?
I'm not so sure if you'd actually get the information from the documentary, but that after the screening, there was a Q&A session with David, and by the way, there's a whole lot more on this subject if you go to if you listen to this week's Sunday 16 podcast. There's Graham and Aid from the Sunday 16 podcast were there as well, and Graham had his microphone out as well, so he was interviewing lots of people. He tried to interview me, but I ran off. But one of the questions that was asked, there was actually several questions, as you might imagine, that were asked, such as why, that kind of stuff. But yeah, there was a question about how they worked out the lighting, and David very, very quickly covered that subject, so quickly and so almost nonchalantly. Oh, that was easy. That was the easiest bit because of this, this, and this. He just left the room just like in stunned silence, okay. And I was sitting near John Whitmore of the Dark Shed, and he goes, "So how did he do that?" I was with Fraser Ewell as well, and we were sort of looking at each other. Goes, "Well, he made it sound like it was easy, and then I came out with something to make me sound clever by saying, oh, it's got something to do with the inverse square law, not understanding this, of course. But that pretty much killed the conversation of that.
You didn't mention Scheinflug in the same breath, did you?
No.
We'll ask Kate about Scheinflug in a minute.
No.
It's going to be easy now, because if you've watched the thread on the Facebook group, there's going to be a T-shirt or a hang round your neck idiot card on how to use the beer mat for the Scheinflug principle.
Right. If I only knew what a beer mat was exactly.
A coaster.
It's mysterious. Yeah, like a paper one?
Well, no, they're made of sort of thin card normally, aren't they? Yeah. Absorbent, so they can absorb the beer when you spill it. That's the idea.
But Wayne Setzer has produced a proof of concept set of beer mats. Although actually there is a problem with it. I haven't really mentioned it on the thread, but I'm sure Wayne will probably get to this podcast at some point. And that's to say that beer mats are meant to be square, and it's currently rectangular, mainly because there's a lot of information on there about how, what the Scheinflug principle is and how to do it. And clearly he wasn't able to put that into a square space. So
well, I'm sure I've seen beer mats that aren't square, but we'll just leave that one hanging there.
Yeah. But no, they were good. And actually that just brings me to my last other thing that I wanted to say was that conversation, or that piece of artwork by Wayne, that came about as a result of an activity that there were some photographs taken at, this week's Six Towns Darkroom Club that I mention every week. And we had Paul Bullock there with us this week, and we were doing a still life exercise. We didn't do any printing at all this week or any development. We just wanted to take some photographs. And Paul brought his chroma camera with him. I was using my Sinar, and we just were doing some still life shots. And Paul also wanted to get a selfie as well. And but there was one point where we were trying to take a photograph of my new speed graphic, and we were wondering about putting a little bit of swing on the shot. And I was going to turn the front stand in one direction, and Robert Price, who was with us, he was agreeing with me. But Paul comes along and says, "I've been on a course for this, and it's like, and you do it like that." And there's a photograph of me explaining Scheinflug, and
you're in the background ignoring him completely. I've seen this.
Yeah.
There was someone he was talking to looking a bit dazed and confused.
That was Robert.
And then you were just had your back to them all.
Yeah. So
that's what you're there to learn, not to ignore learned guests.
Exactly. Well, there you go. What can you say? So on that note, we have a world-renowned expert with us, don't we, Kate? On
Scheinflug.
And you can tell us all about it.
As long as I don't have to say it or explain it.
That's absolutely fine. Well, I think that's a good time to head over to Minnesota. And so what have you been up to?
Well, I shoot pretty much every day. Not always large format, but usually right now. So this week I braved the cold and took my camera out in the backyard and did some photos of my son out there. And I find it's really unpleasant outside to try to shoot large format because it takes so long to set up a shot. And by the time you get it set up, you can't really even feel the knobs of the camera with your hand. But it works. And I know that braver people do shoot outside, and it's a long winter here.
Is this the one? So there's one on your Instagram feed of your lad standing surrounded by snow, looking straight at you, with a big coat on. Is that it?
Yes, probably.
Taken with your Zone 6 4x5?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And good old Fomapan 100. Very nice.
Yes, I love Fomapan 100. Actually, it's like I know how to shoot that comfortably, and it's that's my go-to film.
And there's a lot to be said for that, isn't there? Just knowing that material inside out.
It's so true. I'm trying some 400 for inside, and I'm still trying to figure out how I want to rate it to shoot it.
Well, I don't. Simon might know. I was talking to Stephen Dowling. It was Stephen Dowling, wasn't it? Cosmo Photo Man.
Mm-hmm. That's
right. It is Stephen Dowling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you familiar with Cosmo Photo and their Fomapan packaging in fantastic, really cool cosmonaut packaging?
No. Oh, I don't think so. This sounds exciting.
Well, Stephen Dowling is the man behind Cosmo Photo, and that is Fomapan 100. He talks really openly about it, but he's gone beyond just repackaging. He's created like a whole art movement almost behind this brand, and I've just bought 3 rolls of film from him, and they came with 10 sort of 1950s inspired Soviet Union bits of artwork on stickers. Awesome stuff. And I was talking to him about 400 Fomapan, and he said well, I'm a bit ambivalent about it because unlike HP5 and Tri-X and Burger or Berger, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. You can push those quite successfully, whereas Fomapan just falls apart if you try and rate it at anything much above 400. Well, I mean, I wasn't in a position to argue with him or not. I have no idea because I haven't used it. I know some folks in the Facebook group use it, but I've not seen it used much for large format, whereas Fomapan 100, yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah, the only one I've tried pushing Fomapan 100 just once because I made a mistake when I was metering and realized it too late, but I hadn't developed yet, so I decided to do it. And it worked okay. I mean, there was some loss of quality for sure, especially in the shadows.
Yeah.
But the 400, I find I can't rate it at 400, inside at least. I haven't really shot it outside, but I tried rating it at 200, and shadows are still a little bit dark. So I don't know. I'm still experimenting with it. But yeah. I like when I get it, it does seem to, it does seem to do okay with scanning. If you increase exposure, it handles that all right. It has some latitude, but
the Fomapan though, isn't that branded in the States? Isn't that available as various other rebrands as well?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's like Arista.
Arista, yeah. Someone said that was the brand I was trying to think of, and that was.
Oh, sure, yeah. We can just buy it as Fomapan too,
okay.
Which is what I have done.
Mm-hmm. And is it as cheap as it is in Europe? I mean,
I think probably it's the cheapest choice, and I shoot so much that I have realized that I need to think about that. So. But well, so I was doing that outside, the 100 outside, and then I did some 400 inside this week with, I took some pictures of my 2-year-old niece, and I didn't expect her to hold still for them, but she did, and it's amazing. It's like if you explain what you're doing, even to a 2-year-old, it's such a different experience for them to sit in front of a large format camera that they're interested, and they'll sort of hold still as you're saying, okay, now I'm, putting in the film holder, and
that's a beautiful shot. I can see it's folks listening, you can see what Kate's talking about either now or a bit later on. It's quite fairly early on in the stream near the picture of her son in the snow, and she's just gazing out the shot with some lace curtains, and it's just done beautifully. So if that's Fomapan 400,
it is, yeah.
Wow, yeah. And you really, in that sort of situation, you really wouldn't worry too much about losing details in the shadow, because there's quite a range of tones from coming in the window there, and you've caught the detail in that sort of lace curtain really well, and her face is just perfect. And the fact that shadows disappear is neither here nor there in a picture like that. But the thing with me, when I've tried to I haven't done many portraits with large format, but boy, people seem to really have to stay still. I think maybe I was trying to shoot too wide open, because even if you stop down to something like f8 or even f16 on a large format camera, you're still getting that's not really far. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that when I was trying to do some portraits and trying to be arty, I think I probably had the lens wide open and the depth of field disappeared to almost nothing, so they didn't really need to move very far at all to lose it. Sharpness.
Yeah, I shoot wide open pretty often. Wide open on my lens is f3.5, so I shoot at f4.5 a lot.
So I'm even more impressed now that you managed to get that so sharp.
Well, sometimes you can use the movements to help. I found, like, if you can sort of anticipate that they might move. I mean, you get a little bit of, if you have a little bit of a swing on it, if they move within that range, it's pretty in focus. And I've also relaxed what I consider to be a sharp photo. Like digitally, you think, like, you zoom in on the eye and you're like, okay, are the eyelashes in focus? And then also, is the pupil in focus? And with large format, I'm just like, well, I can see the eyelashes, so yeah, it counts.
Excellent. Yeah, nice approach.
I think there's something to be said there anyway with film in general in terms of sharpness. I mean, that's something I've noticed doing a few close-up shots, and with tiny depth of field where there's only like one eye in focus, and that would really jump out at you with digital. Whereas with film, with the grain and how it goes from sharp to slightly out of focus, it doesn't jar in the same way. It's still sharp enough, whereas it's just, it can look wrong on digital. So I think that's my take on that.
Well, I have no experience, so I don't know. I'll take your word for it, Simon. This picture of your niece is, I just. Yeah. I don't really want to dwell on technicalities, but you mentioned something about swing. Did you, if she's kind of angled, are you moving the lens to go sort of in line with the way she's angled at the camera, or are you just shooting straight, square on in a sort of traditional sense, or are you using swing on the lens?
So this had some, I'm looking at it now too. This had a little tilt. So you can see like her shirt. She had like a pattern on her shirt, and I hate it when they wear like something with like, this isn't too bad because it doesn't have words. If they have words on their shirt, I ask them to turn their shirt around. And my kids will do that because they're used to it. But yeah, I didn't want her shirt to draw the eye too much, so I wanted that a little bit out of focus. So it's got a little tilt for that, and then I think I might have. I can't remember. Yeah, it does look like I added a little swing because the edge of the lace is in focus. So I think I was thinking, I don't remember exactly how much I added, and I certainly don't know in degrees. It's just sort of like,
well, I'm amazed that you managed to fiddle around with all those movements, and she still didn't move.
No, she didn't. I usually try to get the shot set up before I bring the kid in, and then. So I get like a basic idea of what I'm doing, and even pre-focus a little bit, and then have them come sit and then focus in.
There we go. So you really are a master of the Scheimpflug principle. We'll get you a beer mat sent over.
Right. I don't know if I'm a master, but I use it an awful lot for something I can't pronounce.
Excellent. What do you reckon, Simon?
Well, I can just sit here all day looking at Kate's photos, which I've more or less said earlier on, actually, in our pre-chat, and it is a beautiful shot, as are all of Kate's photos. But I think before we're going to have a bit more of a deep delve into that. Let's finish off where Kate was with what she's been up to. I think she's done more than just take a photograph of her son there.
Right. Well, let's see. I was trying to take advantage of, we have our Christmas tree up, and you get certain photo opportunities this time of year that aren't available at other times, which is nice because the light's getting darker, and it's good to have some positives for December photographically. But I did a double exposure with the Christmas tree lights with my son. Where I just really underexposed a shot of the Christmas tree, leaving the lights kind of out of focus. And then reshot that film with just a regular picture of my son looking out a window. And it's actually my second attempt at that because those, I haven't done that many double exposures with large format, and metering it is a little tricky, at least for me. So this time I managed it okay, which is good. But it's always, I love experimenting. That's the best. So.
Got to say, having difficulty with large format double exposures is something that Andrew and I have got a great deal of experience with.
Right. I remember that double exposure challenge, right?
Yeah, we failed miserably on that.
Well, I didn't.
Well, I don't know. What part of my shot was almost okay?
When you start talking about Christmas tree, I've now gone to the one you were talking about, but I was looking at the one with your son with his hands behind his head, and you've got yourself, I think it must be you, in the mirror behind.
Oh, yeah.
And then the tree, and you've clearly employed some jiggery pokery witchcraft camera movements with that, haven't you? Because you've done weird things to the Christmas tree.
Right. Right. Like I kind of push that to the edge of the image circle of the lens, so it's distorted a little bit. And then
that's great.
So I think I had a rear swing on that because I wanted him to become more prominent in the image. I'm trying to remember what I did. I can't remember, but
yeah. So I think
to play around.
One of our learned people like Greg or Wayne will pick us up on this, but I'm sure the rear movements starts much more to play around with apparent perspective, doesn't it? So you can make things in the foreground appear more dominant.
Exactly.
We talked about this a little bit with, if you go and listen to the show with Ben Horn when he was photographing out in somewhere
Death Valley.
Death Valley, that's it. Yes, yeah. Well done, Simon. Excellent stuff.
I was going to say, so Kate, I think it's about time we introduce you properly, or we've heard a little bit more about you and as to your photographic life and stuff. I just want to say I can't remember exactly how I came across you, to be honest, but I found you on Instagram a good while back, and I've been a fan of your work ever since. And there is a very much a style to your photography. It's very evocative. It's very emotional, and it's very personal. And I just think your work is beautiful. But I'd just like to hear from yourself then a little bit more about how you got to this point. So perhaps how you got into photography in general, and how you ended up taking these beautiful large format and other format photos.
Sure. So kind of like everybody, my dad had a Nikon SLR when I was growing up, and he took some great photos of our family, and that sort of stuck in my mind as something I wanted to do someday. But I didn't really start doing it till about 5 years ago. And then I got into digital, and I got really into it. Like, I would take, 300 shots a day, every day. And burned out the shutter on my D750. I think it's on its fourth shutter now. So I was just really, really, really into that. And then eventually I knew I liked the look of large format, and I wanted to go that direction. But there's a big jump from taking, 300 digital photos a day to sheet film. So I went to medium format film, and shot a Mamiya C330 for a while. And then I have a Pentax 6.7 now, and I shot those and really struggled, like with focus and, exposure and all of it. But just kept really working on it. And then I learned to develop, and I just do, I don't have a dark room. I've taken over the half bath in my house and have stuff everywhere in there. But yeah, so I started developing, and then once I had those skills, I finally let myself make the jump to large format, which I was then really scared to try because it seems like it would be hard. And it certainly is. It isn't what anybody would call easy, but it's more complicated than difficult, I think. And I just loved it. I loved it. And it's, for me, almost the most natural way to shoot. And I found, shooting 4 sheets or 6 sheets a day at most, as opposed to 300 digital photos, I found I cared so much more for each photo. So yeah.
So even, Kate, what strikes me is even 4 or 5 images a day is really impressive. Maybe it seems like not very many after 300.
Right.
But the fact that you're managing to use large format in it almost like an Instagram way. Right. Which, your Instagram feed, it's not always large format. Are some of the pictures on there digital, or certainly a lot of them seem to be film?
Yeah, most of them. Well, so over the last few months, it's been transitioning to mostly film. I occasionally will get out the digital, but it doesn't really call to me like it used to, which is strange for something that like I carried everywhere. You know, it was always in my purse and always with me. But yeah, it's mostly 4x5 on my Instagram. Sometimes I use the Pentax 6.7 also, so some 120 on there.
And we can't really go much further without talking about your son. Clearly, he's very happy to be part of this project. But you know, to me, it sort of begs all sorts of really interesting questions. I'm immediately, I suppose I'm not the only one to be drawn to comparisons with the work of Sally Mann as she photographed her kids. Now, yours are very different to Sally, but you know, if you read her book, we've talked about this before. Yeah. She was doing this way before the Instagram generation, and came under a lot of grief, really, you know, about sharing pictures of her kids online. So, do you maybe want to talk about that and how you came to develop this project or start this project with your son and the reasons for it?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so Sally Mann is my favorite photographer. So for you to say that is it's very nice. No, I guess so. My kids are really used to being photographed at this point. And I think it's just sort of something that we do. And for my older son, Eian, he's on the autism spectrum. He's got high functioning autism. And when I was using digital, I started this project where we worked together to make photos about the experience of that parent-child bond as it's affected by autism. It's a little bit different to connect with somebody on the spectrum is hard, or at least I can speak to my own experience because everybody on the spectrum is different. But there's sort of always this like a barrier, but it's invisible, and it varies by the day how thick that barrier is. Sometimes if my son is having a really rough day, it's really hard to connect with him. Like, he can, you know, he'll talk to me, but what he'll talk to me about is, you know, whatever he's into at that time, or something that's just sort of stream of consciousness, and we'll, you know, we go through our day, but it's not with that emotional connection that is possible sometimes. And then other days he can be very accessible and, you know, really empathetic and really, really right there. So I started to explore that concept with my photos, using different things as a barrier between us, you know, thicker things, thinner things. And we did some with ice. We did some with, you know, wire and different, you know, fabrics and all those kinds of things. And that was sort of the beginning of the project. And then it's just from there, I've tried to explore like different ways that autism impacts his life or impacts the way that we connect with each other. So, you know, sensory things like the world being really loud, or processing emotions. It's, you know, there are days where things are just overwhelming, and I try to get that on these days on film. But it's been great. And for him, I think, in talking to him about it and just sort of the impression I get is that, you know, me photographing those things, his experience is a way to connect and show that I'm trying to understand that, and that I think it's worth sharing. So yeah, I don't know. It's sort of evolving. We have a book out, but the book is mostly digital. There's a little bit of film in there, and then I'm still continuing the project now in large format. So
how deep are your conversations with your son? I mean, it sounds like they're pretty deep. I mean, you're sort of very eloquently communicating to us and talking about how it's helping you and him probably explore this bond between parent and child with somebody on the autistic spectrum. But at what point did you sort of sit down and have a conversation with him and saying, I'd really like to, to start making pictures of you? And did you sort of explain your reasons to him in the way that you've just done to us? I mean, how did that sort of evolve from the early days? How did those conversations go?
Well, I don't know. Let's see. I started out doing a 365 project, which then I just have never stopped. So I was already photographing him every day.
Right. So he's used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sort of evolved naturally from that. But then for our book, we already have these great conversations, my son and I, and both my sons. But for my book, I did this thing where I would use a voice recorder and just record the conversation that we were having. So I would ask him questions about what it's like, to have on days and off days, or to be overwhelmed by things someplace, or, he's really, you have to wait. Like you ask a question and then you just sit there and just wait, and it's silent, and the silence can be uncomfortable even because it just stretches on. But eventually then he comes out with his perspective, which is really fascinating. And then I can try to capture that with my photos. So it becomes kind of a dialogue.
Unlike the silences on this podcast when Simon has to edit them.
I think there are quite a few comfortable silences going on here at the moment. It's quite fascinating to listen.
Yeah, there's one image that I really love. I've just, as you've been talking, I was flicking through, and it's the one on one of Jason Lane's dry plates. Funnily enough, which is what you call the creepy prince. I think it's that effect with the eyes, isn't it? With the dry plate.
My other son, who does not have autism, though he has ADHD. So we're working on some for that too. But wow. The Prince one is, that was his birthday.
So you've got one lad with a degree, forgive me, I don't know. I'm treading carefully because I don't fully know the terms, but I know, like most people, I think people's experience of autism, we think back to that film that was in the,
right. Rain Man.
Rain Man, yes.
Yeah.
And I think the awareness of it is my wife was supporting some autistic kids at school. Yeah. And my daughter looks after an autistic lad who's got some physical handicaps as well. And she talks about him, and I'm sure she'll really love listening to this because I know because she spends every day with him now, pretty much every day with him. She's picking up on all sorts of sometimes non-verbal cues, and he'll say things. And she knows when he's upset, because there are just certain ways he'll start to behave, or he'll start to, position his body, and that must. And I can't imagine what it's like for you. I mean, goodness me, you love these kids, but you've got, and I think for you to have this outlet of photography to be able to record and develop your emotions and feelings, and for him to, for both of them, I guess, is it for both of them now? Is the project encompassing both?
Well, I don't know that my younger son is really part of the autism project, but he is certainly part of the photo thing. Yeah. I mean, I photograph him just as much as my older son. But autism is interesting because, I mean, people, everybody talks about it as a spectrum, and it is. And each person is unique in the way that they're affected by it. And so I think part of what I try to do with my work is show that there is that sort of to dispel some of the myths that people have. Like, people sometimes think that somebody on the autism spectrum doesn't really experience empathy. And that's That's absolutely not true. Like, at least in the case of my son. And so I try to capture that in photos too. There's just lots of material to explore. It's really interesting. And then what you were saying about that experience of using it as a therapeutic sort of, as an anti-anxiety tool. I do that a lot. I really it's hard. And certainly at this point, I've kind of come to terms with the whole thing, but when he was younger, and even now sometimes, you get caught in this trap of thinking, okay, this is how he's handling this situation right now. How is he going to handle it, in 5 years or 10 years? Is he going to be able to be functioning? And as a parent, that's just a really scary place to be, because you want the best, and you want to be able to control it and protect your kid, and you do everything you can, but there isn't a way to solve all the potential challenges or to smooth the path enough. And so the photography is wonderful for that, because when you're shooting, and especially shooting large format, you're not thinking anything else. You're thinking like the light, the focus, the movement of this. What do I want? What do I want in focus here? And which way is the light coming from? And it's just everything else in your mind goes quiet, and you get this time to just connect with this person that you're photographing, and to sort of silence all of that chatter, that anxious chatter.
When you're exploring different aspects of the autism, whether it's empathy or their reaction to loud noises, are you having that conversation with him? Sorry, what's your son's name?
Eian is my
Eian. Sorry, you did say, yeah. So when are you speaking to Eian, saying, well, do you use it as a way of exploring those, those issues with autism, like loud noises? I was I came across a really enlightened public toilet recently, and there was signs, the hand dryers, and they make a horrible noise. And there was signs up about autism, and just saying, I forget exactly, but they were referencing autism and the noises, and they weren't exactly warnings, but there was some level of awareness anyway. But
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I'd never seen that before. But so are you having those sort of conversations with them and saying, well, how, I don't know, I have no idea. I could imagine the conversation going something like, well, Eian, do you know how those noises, really upset you? Would you say to him, can we explore that somehow? Have you got any ideas? Do you sort of involve in the creative side, and how does he do?
He is not that interested in it.
Isn't he? That's a shame.
So for him, I mean, so he and I have these conversations, and I think about, these are the things that we could explore in a photo. Yeah. And I conceptualize the picture, or it's just what we're doing, but it works with a theme. And we've certainly had many, many of those conversations, and it affects our daily life. He, for the longest time, would not even go into a public restroom because of the hand dryers. Yeah.
Well, even because, I find them distressing often because they make a horrible noise,
They're so loud. And, for somebody with autism, it's like, for us, you go someplace like a theme park, like here, Disney World, or I'm sure you guys have stuff. And it's just overwhelming. You get home at the end of the day and you're exhausted. But I think that for them, every day is like that. It's like just all of this sensory input, and it's just too much. Mm-hmm. So exploring that, but also that opens up this other perspective of like the times when it's silent for us, or when there isn't anything going on, there are things happening for them. Like my son hears, if if the snow is melting off our roof and dripping onto my husband's gas grill outside, and it makes he hears a note, like a musical note when the water hits the metal. Or he does that with like a rubber band. He'll just like stretch it to different, tensions and listen to it. And so there's this sort of this other world that maybe we don't see. It's like for us, for photographers, I remember it's time before I was taking pictures and I just went around, seeing things, and but nothing was especially remarkable. And then you learn to see light, and everything becomes remarkable because of the way the light is hitting it. And I think for him, it's like that for sound. So while the hand dryer is just a horrible noise and just shuts out everything else in his life, he does experience this other reality of like the sound of, waves hitting a shore or, wind in trees in a way that maybe we don't. So I try to explore that too. But mostly what he talks to me about while we're shooting isn't necessarily his perspective, but whatever he wants. It's like a chance for him to talk about something that he knows I really am not that interested in. Like, he knows like 750 some names of dinosaurs, right? And so he talks to me about those, and it's interesting.
And you sometimes make images of yourself, and they're clearly part of the story. I was looking at some to see how you fit into this, because you don't have so many, but there's one there from a while ago in the summer, I think, called Intensity, which is red. One of the things. No, that's not Eian and I share. I stumbled over the name then because it's spelt with an E. Is that right? Eian?
It is. Yes.
Ooh, yep. And I share is our intensity. It's a mix of anxiety and obsession.
Yeah.
And it's joyful and exhilarating. So what's that? What's that? Is that the color, or is it just anything that's in? Is it? Are you an intense person as well?
Yeah. I am. I mean, I think so. Autism. They talk about this idea of a broader autism phenotype, but people who have kids with autism frequently have some of the traits themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that, the more everybody learns about autism, the more we realize that we all have some of the traits.
Yeah.
But for me, I get these just intense obsessions. And for me, that's photography. But it's, 80% of what I think about when I'm not thinking about the things I have to think about. And my son is like that right now with dinosaurs. It changes based on what he's into at the time. But
you see, I always think that as a male thing, because in my experience, I mean, the longest obsession I've had has been photography, and I don't know, I could probably up the ante on the time that you said you think about it, because it's constantly with me, constantly with me, and I'm kind of obsessed by it.
Yeah. And
you talk, and I have heard of people say, well, a lot of men find themselves, if they think about it, they analyze themselves, they're probably on that somewhere on that spectrum. But I didn't know whether that was just a glib thing or whether there was any sense to it really.
It's probably somewhere in between. I mean, I think the more that people understand about autism and about that perspective, the more we realize that we're not really all that different. It's just sort of a more extreme version of something that we all experience.
Yeah.
And for photography, I don't know if that's I don't know. I mean, I don't know that many women large format photographers, and I think to shoot large format you have to really want it and you have to really be into it, and probably there's a subset of us who that's really that's just really 80% of what we think about or more.
Yeah, well, I think you've clearly used, as you've got more and more into photography, and to use your own words, you've started to observe light, and I think the word observe, and that's given you that must be such a help in your relationship with Eian, that the fact that you can just take time, observe, and it must be a real kind of calming influence, for the both of you, really.
It is, it's something for me to think about that is something I enjoy.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, really important when you could also I do spend too much time worrying about, how to try to fix things for him. And, and a lot of the time that's been productive. And I've been working with him since he was 12 months old. And, I really have had there's been a lot of good in obsessing over how to help him. But for me, mentally, I think it's hard. And so the photography is really good. I actually have a group of women photographers with kids with special needs that we're working on a group project on Instagram, and they're from around the world doing self-portraits of, just to take a little time every month or more frequently, depending, and just do a photograph of ourselves, to show that perspective, because I think that easily gets lost. When you have children and you're a woman, it's like, even if you think about like even the photographs of, you might have these maternity photos of a pregnant mom, but then when the baby's born, all the photos are of the baby, and they're stop taking photos of this experience of motherhood. So I think, self-portraiture in that respect is really important to say, this perspective is still here.
I noticed someone another lady whose work I admire greatly is Anne Silver. And yes, she comments, she likes and comments a lot on your work, but she uses a self-portrait medium a lot. And, folks out there that aren't familiar with Anne Silver's work, I think at the moment she's working, or she had been doing cyanotypes, really getting into that process.
She's some really beautiful cyanotypes and a lot of beautiful large format work too.
There's a guest for you, Simon. Are you familiar with Anne Silver's work?
I'm not, but I think I need to be. So.
I think she did some. Did I first start chatting to her with Polaroid stuff? I think maybe she's done that as well. I'm sure she has. Yeah. I wasn't. Was I aware she was doing large format? I may have been. I don't know. Certainly cyanotype. So I probably was. What's that group? Is that the little the Instagram group you're part of, Kate? Is that one we can put in the show notes later?
Sure. Yeah. I'm the only person shooting large format in it, but
it's okay.
At least so far. It's called My Own Mask First.
Oh yes, you've got a hashtag, haven't you, on there? My Own Mask First, and the image there. Sorry, Simon. Just one more thing. One more image I've just really, really drawn to again. So many like you, Simon. It's just beautiful work, and and having the opportunity to talk to you, to put some interpretation on the images. The one I'm staring at the moment is again with you in the background, defocused, but holding the egg timer. And what I mean, I don't capture time. I think you're there, but it speaks to me of it kind of sums up everything really. The time you spend with your kids and the time it takes to do the large format work, time in terms of probably you worrying about the future and what's going to, I mean, I worry about my kids, what's going to come in them, but you've got another added layer, haven't you, to worry about?
Definitely.
And so time is a massive thing here in everything you do.
Well, and in photography, it is just an integral part, right? It's like, whatever fraction of a second we have the shutter set to.
Yeah.
And I sort of think of it as this way to send. It's a little bit like time travel, that you can send these moments into the future.
Yeah.
I think of some future me wanting to see these things, or it's such a short time that we have with our kids.
Oh, you're making me feel now like I've missed so many opportunities. I wish I was maybe I need to go and somehow have some more babies, but I don't think it's physically possible now. Just so I can start a project. Wow. Okay.
Well,
say something, Simon.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the irony of that group that you're in, my own mask first.
Yeah.
Because your shots, invariably, even if they're not of you or of your children or family, there's I think in almost every case there's an element of vulnerability.
Yes,
and it's I find that quite extraordinary, and I'm just wondering, it's one thing with the self portraits, because you can visualize and make yourself how you wish to be seen, but so many of the photographs that you have, they appear to be candid, but we know that they're not.
Right.
And I find that quite extraordinary as well. So I'm just wondering, is it a conscious effort to make these shots so intimate, or does it just happen that way? Is that just the way that your photography manifests itself?
Well, I think for me, probably the main reason I take photographs or make them is that connection, forming a connection with the viewer or with the subject. It's like, I think of it sometimes like a triangle. There's me as the photographer, and then there's this child subject, or sometimes I'm also the subject. And then there's the viewer, and I'm conscious of all three of those when I'm taking a picture, and how to make a connection between the 3 points. So I look for ways to do that, whether it's through like a sensory detail that the viewer, when they're looking at this, might, think, I know what it's like to stand next to a lilac bush, that kind of thing, or I know what that smell is like. Or, an emotional detail so that they feel empathy when they're looking at it. But I think that, and the vulnerability too, right? I mean, if somebody displays vulnerability, that is very real. It connects us to each other when we sort of let down our guard against things. And so essentially I'm aiming to create that connection all the time. I guess, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does, and that's fascinating for me, because you mentioned like the three points in how you consider your photography. I pretty much do two of them, but I don't really consider the impact that this photograph may have on other people. That's something that's just completely missing in my process for taking a photograph.
That's interesting. I think maybe it comes from our current environment of, with Instagram. It's like you've got this sudden feedback, instant feedback to what you put out there. And I think it's a reminder that there is that audience.
Yeah. Well, it certainly comes through. There's absolutely no two ways about it. There is that connection. I can look around these photographs, and you're in some woods, or whether it be in maybe your home, or wherever these photographs are taken, and I feel I'm there. I feel very, very connected to every photograph, and including, like I say, there's some photographs that don't have people in. There's just a dining table, and it's set. It's ready for a meal to be had, and it's just as intimate and just as vulnerable as the other photographs. So I think it's quite extraordinary how I don't know if it's a matter because I'm looking at a body of work, and therefore I'm in that frame of mind, or whether I'd look at this differently if it was in isolation. But I know that I would like that. The photographs of that type that you've done, I would enjoy them for what they are, and I would certainly feel that I could walk into that space.
Oh, thank you. It's much, much harder for me if there's not a person. I challenge myself to try to include some without people, but it's very hard for me.
So I was just going to say, and I have just a final point there. The photographs with Eian, they again, we know that there's an element of posing that goes on in there in terms of setting up, but they don't look posed. They look very, very natural. But is that? I mean, I'm just wondering if Eian lacks a certain self-consciousness that makes him just more relaxed in front of a camera.
I think that's probably true. I mean, they're so used to it. It's been, every day for 5 years that they've been being photographed. And so they don't really think anything of it. They put up nothing between themselves and the camera because of that. And that's really hard with other people for me. I mean, we all sort of instantly put up some kind of guard against, how we might be perceived. And they don't think like that, which is problematic when they go to have their school photos taken because they're supposed to smile and they don't know how to do that.
Oh, bless him. Yeah. Yeah, there's certainly no Instagram poses or pouts or strange things, are there? It's almost like you've gone and employed a professional child model to say, okay, I need a child that's going to give me some nice vulnerable pictures. Have you got one? Well, boy, you've done well. I had a fright a minute ago. I thought you'd been on a trip with Ben Horn or somebody, because I just saw a Ben Horn photograph pop up in Antelope Canyon with your son at the bottom.
Oh, right. Yes. No, we went to Antelope Canyon last spring.
I've got to say, I find that I spotted those earlier, and I found it quite hilarious that you're a large format photographer. You've been to Antelope Canyon and these places, and you took snaps instead. I love that.
I know. Those are digital. Yeah. My family, I mean, when you go to pack for a trip and you're getting everything together and, you got the pile of the suitcases and stuff. And then I haul out my wood tripod and my giant backpack. And my husband's just like, you're bringing that? And I'm like, yeah, of course I'm bringing it. but it doesn't work super well at a family vacation, I have found.
So you mentioned your husband, and so you mentioned him there in terms of going on a family trip. But how is he? What does he get out of this project? Because there's just one half of the picture here, isn't there? So there's Are you at home all day with your kids? Or is he out at work, or how does that? Right. Does he feel left out of this kind of relationship you have, and what's the impact on him?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I work at home as a writer and editor for, just part-time, and then I'm home with the kids. So I'm really home is where I spend all my time. Yeah. And he does go out to work. He works from home sometimes, but he doesn't like to be photographed overly much. So he doesn't really appear very often. I mean, sometimes I can talk him into it. And I mean, I took a large format photo of him where I was trying to get this really close shot of his eye. And of course I ended up, messing up the focus because the depth of field was so shallow at that point. But he said, I can hear you breathing excitedly, like, it's just so, it's so intense when you're taking a picture. But for him, I think he sometimes feels left out. I think it's hard. He doesn't really do these things with us, go places, like, cause he's not necessarily into that as much. And so I think it's interesting. I try to include him when I can, when he's sort of just doing some relaxed thing with the kids. And he usually, at this point, he will tolerate me bringing out a camera for that. But yeah, it's interesting. He's really supportive of like going when I have something in a show or, going to like the book release party and stuff like that. And he tells people about it. So I can tell he's proud of it. But yeah.
So he should be. And does he have, I was going to say coping mechanism. It's probably not the right word, but this is a kind of coping mechanism for you, I think. And does he have similar coping mechanisms or other ones? How does he manage that relationship? You've got photography, haven't you?
Right. I do.
To explore your feelings and come to terms with it.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose he's out of the house a little bit more, though, isn't he, as well?
He is. And when he's home, after the kids are in bed, he does some video gaming. I think that's his, that's his escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been working you've done a little bit of cyanotype work as well, which is
just a little bit. Yeah. I would like to get into that a little more. Right now I mostly do the hybrid workflow. I scan and I have a V550, so I have to scan in 2 passes, which is a huge pain, but yeah, so for contact prints, before the weather turned too nasty here, I did some outside with a contact printing frame and experimented with that. I'm looking forward to doing more of that too.
Yeah, I have a really oldie hardwood printing frame, which I love. I don't know where I got it from. Somebody gave it to me years and years ago, and when they gave it to me, I thought, I don't even know what that is, and I kept it and kept it and kept it. And then when I started messing around with some salt prints, I thought, now I've got a use for it. And I dug it out and it's just lovely. I think I had to replace the glass I think the glass had got cracked.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, there's so many ways to go. Like I was telling somebody a while ago that, shooting large format is it's like being in love, like falling in love, because you have you think about it all the time, and there are there are all these different ways that you can grow with it, that printing and different, someday maybe moving up to 8x10.
Yeah, the possibilities are so exciting and endless,
right,
and sometimes a bit scary as well.
Yes.
I think our joint love story with large format photography, I think we need to bring that to an end for today. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you, Kate, about your work, your philosophy, how you approach everything. So just thank you for being a great guest and having a fascinating conversation with us.
Oh, thanks. I'm so honored to be on here.
Honours all ours, and I'm sure
absolutely
our listeners will be very feel the same way. Okay, so quick bit of housekeeping, because I've not mentioned it for weeks, and that is we have a coffee page that's ko-fi.com, whereas if you want to donate towards the running costs of the show and things like that, then you're more than welcome to do so. And in fact, I haven't actually mentioned this, I think, on the last 3 shows, but I just want to say thank you to the last 3 people that have donated to us. And the first person on this list from 28th of September is somebody called Kate Miller-Wilson.
I've never heard of it.
And I just wanted to say there, you don't have to donate to the show to become a guest on the show.
But it helps.
So thank you, Kate. And also James Thorpe also donated to us. And back in November, Christopher J. May donated to us and left us a little message. And he goes, "Yikes, I haven't listened nor contributed to several fortnights. My apologies, gentlemen. A cross-country move, a new job, wedding, all demanded my attention these past few months. Working on catching up on the LFPP now, though. So you're forgiven there, Christopher.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's do some shout-outs. Andrew, have you got any shout-outs?
Probably, but I can't think what they might be. We've been doing this 40 weeks now.
Yeah.
By the time we're up to a year, I might have remembered to do a shout out.
Okay. How about you, Kate? Have you got somebody you want to say hello to or anything like that?
Well, just our self-portrait project, my own mask first.
Got that.
I'm gonna be cruel to you now. You did say that you might have somebody that you couldn't pronounce their names and stuff. Do you want to give them a quick go and then?
I wasn't going to be so harsh and cruel on air to.
All right, there are some people that I'm friends with on Instagram and follow and really admire their work, and I just, but I don't know how to pronounce their last names.
Have a stab. Go on.
But Andrew Genjigian, he's on Instagram just as his name, which good luck with that one.
It sounded plausible.
But his work is just excellent. I just really admire. He does a lot of 4x5 and some medium format film, and he does a lot of cyanotype printing. That's just really excellent. And I also really like Ray Bidigan, who I think he does palladium printing or platinum. I'm not sure which. But it's just amazing work too. Lots of fine art portraits.
So I nearly said something. Ray Bidigan probably has hairs on his chinnigan, but I won't say that. Just edit that bit out.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes I just can't blurt things out. I think there must be something wrong with me. Keep it in your head, Andrew, please, for goodness sake.
And was that it?
Yeah, no, that's it.
Okay.
As I work to put the show notes together, pretty much immediately after we stop this recording, so Simon can put the show out. Maybe just drop those links into our little Facebook chat.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Kate, please. So I know exactly I've got the right person.
That'll be good. And I'm just going to do my usual shout out for the Six Towns Darkroom Club. And we're now an international club as well. Because Wayne Setzer in Tennessee has joined the Six Towns Darkroom Club. I don't know if we need to call that international now or something like that. I think it's.
What do you mean he's joined it? Well, what's he joined?
Well, exactly? He's joined the Facebook group that we have.
Oh, I've not joined that, have I? No, I don't think I've joined that.
No. But it was largely because Wayne published. I think it was on the Light in the Dark podcast Facebook group, and Wayne had put an image in there that he did a video of it doing split grey printing. Oh yeah,
I watched that the other night.
That's it. And I've heard a few things about split grey printing, and it made so much sense the way that he talked through his operations. You know, it did what mattered and left out the bits that didn't matter. At least I think he did anyway. Because I didn't see them, because he didn't put them in. But it seemed like what was in there was the important bit. And so I saw that, and I said I'd like to share this in our little group, just so that the guys can see it. Really, because the only way to actually share a video, as far as I was aware, is actually being in a group and then sharing it from that group. So he joined us, and he's starting to have conversations with the few of us that are actually in there. So thanks for that, Wayne, and well done to the guys at the Six Towns Darkroom Club. And if you want to come along on a Tuesday night, we're going to have a break over Christmas, but we're there again next Tuesday. I think that's the 17th. I think
I'll be dropping the camera into you if you're at home on Tuesday. I won't be able to come to the Six Towns Darkroom because I have to be in Manchester Tuesday night, but I was going to drop that camera off to you with some sheet film that I'll cut down.
I just wish to shame you on this, really, because
no, you don't.
You've had, I'm going to.
No,
have that
I can't. Do you know what? I can't even work out how to load those dark slides, those wooden dark slides. But one of them had a sheet of film in which I yanked out. I didn't even slide it out. I yanked it out. So now I know exactly how big to cut it. So I'm going to cut you some film, put it in a black bag, and I'll leave you to work out how to load those dark slides and deal with it, because I keep tripping over this bag in my office here, and it's a bit like my lab box. I keep looking at it and do nothing with it. So I will cut you film. Okay. And if you're at home on Tuesday on my way up north, I shall call in.
I've got to say, and this is probably heresy now, but I'm thinking, because I mean, one's a meniscus lens that you have, Taylor Hobson meniscus lens.
I know, it's lovely.
But now that I have a speed graphic, I can use them on that.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I'm actually going to do, and probably won't be using this old painted wooden brass camera. So I can do it far more easily on that one. But then again, if you turn up with some cut sheet film, then
we'll do.
Choice
No, I'll do enough sheet film to fill all the holders, and then you can work it out.
Okay, and this is all because of fear of the Thornton Pickard.
I'm going to break it. No, I'll break it if I play with it. I know that. So
okay.
And ideally, I will come to 6 times darkroom, but it's not going to be a while yet. So,
well, we'll look forward to.
Well, I have got a shout out though. I've got a shout out. If you folks, if you want to buy Kate's book, then you can do so, and the easiest way is just to go to Instagram and look on the link, and it takes you to Amazon, where you can buy a hardback or a softback copy of the book. Is it called? I can't look.
It's
me
called
lens.
Look Me in the Lens, and we only have soft covers left, but they're really nice, good quality. I was really happy with the picture.
It looked great. I had a look last night, and it did look lovely. Are you planning on doing anything with the large format images?
I am hoping to continue this series with sort of exploring the process of becoming, going through puberty as somebody who doesn't really love change. Yeah. So that's
the next challenge for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is. so that causes a lot of anxiety for him, and so we're going to try and do something around that.
Wow.
Well, on that note about where that book's available, do you want to, Kate, let people know the various places where people can find your work? We've covered Instagram many times there, which is Kate Miller Wilson, which is very easy to find. So where else are you?
That's mostly where I post, with any regularity. I am also on Flickr as Kate Miller Wilson. I haven't really been on there for a few months, but and then I have a website, Kate Neri Photography. It's Neary. And I put some things on there sometimes too, but Instagram is the main place.
Yeah, it's quite easy to find that website though. If you just do a Google search for or your favorite search engine for Kate Miller Wilson, you will find that it's one of the first things that pops up, along with a few articles as well. That you've been involved with and people have written about you. So that's worth a journey in itself. So
thanks.
So, yeah. Okay. Andrew, how can people follow you outside of this show?
They can follow me on Twitter as Warboys Snapper. They can follow me on Instagram as Warboys Snapper. They can follow me on... That's it, I think, really. Oh, well, then the lenslet... No. What is it? The Large Format Photography Podcast Facebook group. That's it. That's the one.
Yes. You may as well say the other one as well.
Oh, the other one, yes. Yeah. You can. The other Twitter feed is the Lensless Podcast. I look after that, and I hang out and help look after the Facebook group, the Lensless Podcast Facebook group.
Oh, can I add one more shout out?
Certainly.
You guys have already interviewed Jason Lane, but his dry plates are just amazing to work with. They're so much fun. I'm really excited after seeing some work and not least yours. I'll soon have did you back the Kickstarter for the holder? I didn't. I already have a holder. Otherwise, I would have.
Yeah. Well, I'm waiting for that to come now. I think that's progressing really well by the looks of it. So that won't be too long. And then I'll get me some plates. I think maybe Paul from Analog Wonderland should be stocking them, but I got a feeling there might be somewhere else in the UK you can get them, but Analog Wonderland is probably the best place. Eventually he will stock them, I'm sure.
Okay, well, my contact things are where you can keep up with me. Twitter is a good one, which is Simon4. I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic. You can hear me every week on the Classic Lenses podcast, but I think most of the time Instagram and our Facebook group is probably the best place, which is the Large Format Photography Podcast Facebook group. If you want to get in touch with us, then all of the above would work, but we also have an email address, which is the Large Format Photography Podcast @gmail.com. You can also listen to this show with subtitles if you feel the need on YouTube, because we have a YouTube channel, and literally singles of people watch our podcast. YouTube is the future. So if you just do a search for Large Format Photography Podcast, and you'll find our channel, and this show will be there. And that's it. Kate, thank you again for being wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's been great. Right, so that's it for this time. We'll be it's probably playing as we speak, the theme music, which is called Two Fingered Johnny, by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. So thank you to him. And so we hope you've enjoyed this fortnight show, and hopefully you'll come back to us in another fortnight. So goodbye.
Goodbye.
You can say goodbye too, Kate.
Oh, goodbye.